This video contains mega spoilers. Do not watch it if you have any interest in watching Land of the Lustrous without any spoilers, without knowing the ending. I will be talking about various different points, but I will not be fully going into detail over every single plot line and every single point. This is just about the character. So if you don't want to be spoiled, watch a different video. Land of the Lustrous is one of my all-time favorite mangas and anime. I love the sparkly colors in the anime, and I love the amazing use of negative space in the manga. Also, the characterization of the main character, Phosphophyllite, the typical bright, optimistic, bubbly anime main character, in this story, it has such a unique take, and it's very different from other versions of how they deal with the character overcoming adversity. The evolution of Phosphophyllite in this story is one of my favorite characterizations in media. It goes from Phos being the typical anime manga protagonist, very optimistic, very bright, very bubbly, and slowly over time, with all the things that happen in the story, the character really advances and changes from who they were initially. It really brings upon interesting questions such as Theseus's ship and the concept of losing yourself to your goals and advancing yourself through life as something not entirely you. Land of the Lustrous takes place in a post-humanity world. Basically, all the humans have been destroyed. Over time, those who did survive and the beings that did exist, they split into 3 different groups. They split into the flesh, the bones, and the spirit. The main cast are the bones, which are gems. The rocks over time, they formed in the ocean and eventually crawled out and gained sentience, and were eventually formed into the beings that you see now. And so the mission of the gems is to just live their everyday life and to enjoy it and to find joy and peace in their days. But the Lunarians every single day come down from the moon in order to break apart the gems and use their bodies for ornate jewelry or other weapons so they can continue their crusade upon them. Bubbly, and their physical gem structure is a lot different from the other gems there. Sitting at around a 3 on the most hardness scale, the scratchability is around somewhere between your fingernail and the top of a penny. Compared to all the other gems, their combat ability is a lot lower since they are so fragile and break upon impact with anything else, essentially. For this reason that there are so many other jobs, such as working in the library or being a fashion designer. There's more than just one outlet for them to do with their lives. In comparison to Dia and Boards, who are both diamonds and virtually indestructible to the weapons of the Lunarians, Phos stands absolutely no chance. The weapons itself is either too heavy for them to carry, or they break, they shatter, they crack, over and over again, forced to be glued back together with the very resin that they are made to collect. Cursed or perhaps blessed with virtual immortality. Even though Phos really wants to work with the other gems and fight against the Lunarians, they really cannot because they will just fall apart and break immediately, basically just being a massive liability on the rest of the team. Phos is really trying to connect with the others in order to find some kind of partner that they can build a bond with and work with, especially in combat. This is the driving force for why Phos decides to seek out Cinnabar. They learn about Cinnabar living on the outsides of the island, all by themselves, isolation, and only working at night. The relationship of Cinnabar and Phosphophyllite is also a really interesting one, which I won't fully go into, but it's very important to know that they were making a promise together in the first couple of chapters. After Phos realized how bad they felt for Cinnabar and their situation, they decided to make a promise that they will find a job for Cinnabar that only Cinnabar can do, in order to make Cinnabar happy and have fun with everyone. So, because of this, that is Phos's entire goal for searching out and looking for new things, just to help their friend. But over time, this goal is really lost, and Phos slowly forgets more and more. Even in the first time that Phos breaks down, you can see inside of their fragments pictures of Cinnabar in there. And only just over time it gets worse, and eventually it leads to the point where after Phos is fighting Cinnabar on their conflict, Cinnabar actually does say, "Thank you for fulfilling the promise. I finally feel cared for. I finally feel happy. I had so much fun with everyone." But unfortunately, Phos does not remember any of this. Phos is too far gone. Phos has lost everything, and including their promise. And then, for some reason, a snail falls out of the sky. Who was expecting that? I don't know, definitely not me, but the snail is now crash landed into their island, into their home. Yup. Yup. Phosphophyllite is a very pretty color. It's a very green aquamarine kind of mint. It's very translucent when you put a light and it kind of glows. It looks great. It really looks like rock candy. So it's definitely no surprise when this alien snail just falls out of the sky and chomps down on Phos. Phos is just immediately eaten and consumed by all the digestive enzymes within the snail. From this point on, Phos is ultimately gone. There's no more Phos. Phos doesn't exist. It is just a snail. And the snail, they defeat the snail, and the snail separates into two things: the little fleshy snail guy and the massive shell. Everyone thinks that Phos has turned into the little fleshy snail guy. Since he goes around, he's very happy. The snail is eating everything. The snail is living its good life. Most of them want to leave Phos as the snail, since maybe it's an easier life. The Lunarians aren't going to come after them. Your life is just thinking about, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to sleep? Are you just going to eat? They think that Phos looks really happy. But ultimately, a couple of them decide, no, we want Phos back. Let's bring her back. So they go to the shell and they see all the mineral deposits and chip it out. And one by one, they add it all back together. And so they ultimately put Phos back together. They do this by collecting all the shards that are in there, even though it's not all of them, it's most of Phos. And so then they put Phos back together in this beautiful scene. One very common misconception with the scene is that phosphophyllite is actually being separated from their mind and their body. The mind is converging with the snail's mind, and the body is converging with the snail's shell. But this is actually wrong and incorrect. A lot of the times you'll see people reference, oh, it's Phos the snail, but when you're actually looking at the manga and the story, Phos isn't actually the snail. Phos is only becoming a part of the snail. The snail's personality itself is still the same, and Phos is only a small segment of that. It's very hard to see the difference between this, and I also thought that the snail became Phos, but it would ultimately make no sense because the entire personality is gone. Phos is only just in the back seat of the snail, watching from behind. So Phos becomes a part of the snail and ultimately ceases to exist for a while. Since the gems are immortal beings, their memories and their sense of self lies throughout their very structure. Even though they are immortal, they aren't immortal in the sense that they can either be reconstructed or not. Kind of like vampires from Vampire Diaries, where you stab them with a stake, they'll be dead, but if you take it out, they'll come back to life, you know? Kind of like that. Yet Phos's experience of converging mind and bodies has definitely left a mark. Phos is now able to understand the snail's language and understand what it's saying and what it's talking about. The snail tells Phos that their name is Ruler, or Ventricosis, and that the story of their homeland is underwater, and that they were sent there and colonized and exploited upon by the Lunarians. Ruler tells Phos that there isn't enough food on the island for them to continue to eat, and that they need to return to the ocean to find more food and see their homeland before they eventually die. Since Phos is immortal, they don't understand the concept of death. Even though they just experienced something very similar to what death is, they cannot conceptualize it, describes it as a place that is nowhere and is a place that you are unable to call out to, and that brings value to the meaning of life. Every second is something to be worth cherishing. After learning about death, Phos feels bad for Ruler and wants to take them back to their homeland. As Phos and Ruler head deep into the ocean, Ruler eventually turns back into their natural form and then apologizes to Phos, since this is indeed a setup. Ruler has led Phos there so that they can be taken by the Lunarians in exchange for their little brother to come back to them. The Lunarians demand more and more from Ventricosis, but Ventricosis has no more to give. At that moment, Aculatus wakes up and is able to fight off the Lunarians so that they can escape. Feeling guilty for using Phos as a bargaining chip, they decide to spare Phos, and admiring Phos's selflessness and not trying to fight back, in exchange, they give them a piece of agate from the shell. Then they bring Phos home. Phos's legs then get replaced by the agate. Their legs are now different and stronger. The dissatisfaction with life and seeking knowledge of the outside world has cost her legs and therefore her memories. Around 1/3 of their body has now been replaced. Phos is losing parts of themselves, their memories, their sense of being. They even forgot multiple people that they have lived with for over 300 years. They also forget all of the secrets that were told to them in the ocean, and don't remember any of the meeting with the Lunarians. Mangaka uses so many depictions of Buddhism throughout all of this story, and as it goes on, it just really increases and relates more to it. The mangaka did initially study Buddhism in school, which is very interesting, but yeah, you can directly see this in the iconography of all the Lunarians and of the teacher and all the other things that kind of just like that you would relate Buddhism to. But in all honesty, one of the best things about this version of Phosphophyllite is that they are so bright, they are so ambitious, they are so naive per se to the world and are excited to learn a lot more. But after all these encounters, Phosphophyllite unfortunately does change who they are through their lived life experience. But this is such a integral part of the story since this is truly who Phosphophyllite is. An ambitious character who is seeking the good in all people and looking for some kind of better life for everyone. The next arc is the winter arc. This arc directly comes from Phos wanting to be better, wanting to learn more, and feeling so small in their own place in the world. So for the winter arc, they beg their teacher to allow them to go out and work with Antark during the winter season so that they can become stronger and learn more, and to have some kind of job that they can do. Antarcticite is also a really interesting gem since they can only form while in the winter season, making this a perfect job for them since this is the only time that they are a solid form and the only time that they can move around. Their desire and love for their teacher, sensei, really motivates them to go further and further in their life and seek praise and attention. Throughout the winter season, Phosphophyllite learns a lot more about what to do. They learn the job and they develop a deeper bond with Antark. Their job during the winter season is to clean up all the snow around while all the other gems hibernate. Since the gems all receive their energy from the sun, during the winter months there are less sun, so they all go into hibernation mode, meaning any other gem that is out there during the day is going to be receiving a lot less energy, making it really harder for them to just exist and function. So their job during the winter season is to get rid of all the snow, keep the paths clear, and to destroy all the icebergs and ice spikes that are there. The ice spikes are really loud, and so if they're left there, the gems inside will be unable to hibernate and not get a proper resting sleep. So one day when they were all destroying the ice spikes, Phosphophyllite gets led into the ice with voices saying, "Oh, come closer, come closer, come closer. We want to talk to you. What if this happened?" And Phosphophyllite unfortunately falls for that and ends up putting their arm into the icebergs, which promptly crush and destroy Phos's arm. Antarcticite and Phos try to get the arm back, but to no avail, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. They cannot receive it. After this, Phos is lost and looking for more things that they can use for their arms, because they're practically useless now. So while searching on the banks for other minerals, they find a type of gold alloy. This gold alloy is then used and put into Phos's arms. But this is uncontrollable. They weren't ready for this and had no idea how the alloy would react, since it is a different gem. When Phos was getting the metal put onto their arms, it started to take over their body, and while this was happening, a sunspot appeared. The Lunarians then came down from the sky in order to take advantage of Phosphophyllite's situation. They revealed themselves and promptly decided to kill and take Antarcticite. Phos, being virtually unable to move or even function, gets covered in their own gold alloy as they watch Antarcticite get taken away. This is a really important part of the story. Antarcticite is one of the closest friends that Phos has currently made and has the strongest bond with, since it was just the two of them for most of the month. Phos feels just more distant and useless since they were there and couldn't reach Antark in time and just watched as they were taken away. Antark's loss on the rest of the society is a great burden. Everyone grieves, especially Phosphophyllite. At this time, Phos cuts their hair short and begins to act more and more like Antark, trying to take on more of a professional appearance and mourn their dead friend. They are unable to really cope with that emotion and that feeling, and they don't know what to do with it. Since we already know that Buddhism is such an integral part of the plot, we can interrelate that Buddhism philosophy and stories with the Phos's story. When looking at the Buddhist legends, you can see that Siddhartha's legend, where he lived in such a grand palace, and yet he still was unhappy with his life and decided to seek out further information of the world. On this journey of him going outside of his rich home, he was able to see an old man, a dead man, and a sick man. Just like that, Phosphophyllite actually also left the palace of their own, seeking more than what they already had. Their lifestyle, they had friends, they had family, they had a loving place to be, they had people that cared about them, yet they still were unhappy with what they were given and wanted to find something more, seek the truth of the world. The truth always comes with a price. So Phosphophyllite, much like Siddhartha, also saw a sick man, a dead man, and an old man. The old man being the Amaryllis, Vitricosis and the others were so much more mature, even though they were so much younger than Phos, who was 300 years old. This sign of age and maturity is something that only really comes with the fact that you will die, which is completely different to the gems, since they are immortal beings. The sick man is Papardacha. Even though Papardacha is a gem who is immortal, they are cursed with being sick and ill, and not being able to function. There's holes throughout their whole body, and they always reject any other gem that is put back into their body to keep them alive. This causes Rutiel to be looking for a cure their entire lives, and Papardacha is always in bouts of sleeping for over 200 years, and most of their life they are unable to do anything. Even when they do get to the moon and there are ample gems, Papardacha still is not fully able to exist because it is still rejecting from their body. And death is related to Antarcticite. When Phos was with Antarcticite, that was the real time when Phos really saw someone who was getting hurt and no longer was existing. We can see by the hair and the rest of the demeanor after Antarc does die. Phos is a completely different person, very much changed from the experience as well as Ghost. In this next chapter, Phosphophyllite is in a conflict with the Lunarians, and unfortunately, while fighting the Lunarians, they do actually lose their head, and their head is taken away by them, back to the moon. So now that Phos is just losing more parts of themselves, and their torso is only mainly just Phosphophyllite now, they have to find a replacement head. So out of all the replacement heads, they only have one head. That is Lapis Lazuli. So they take Lapis's head and they put it onto Phos's body. But that also brings up the question, if the head is gone, is this still truly Phos, or has this become Lapis? Is this another gem completely? Is it some kind of lapis, agate, gold, phosphophyllite kind of creature now? Is it the same person? There are no true answers for this because it does go into such detail, but it is really reminiscent of Theseus' ship. How much of the ship can you take apart and put back together? What percentage of the ship needs to be taken away and new pieces replaced with it for it to be the same ship? Or is it the same ship no matter how much is put into it? So after Phos's head gets replaced by Lapis Lazuli's head, more and more thoughts and memories of Lapis Lazuli's personality comes out in Phos. Lapis's manipulative and tenacious, sociopathic kind of tendencies come out and manipulate Phos into doing bad things and distancing their relationship more and more. Because of Lapis's tendencies, Phosphophyllite gets convinced to go to the moon. Because of this, once Phos revives on the moon, they are trapped and are taken onto the Lunarian side after learning the truth of everything. After learning the secrets of everything and how the Lunarians are able to create gems and build everyone back up, they start thinking about how they were lost and how every single one of them has just been used for their lifestyle. This makes Phos really frustrated, and they try to fight back against the Lunarians, but unfortunately, they are not strong enough. In this instance, the Lunarians convince Phos and tell them things about their world and their goals. They talk about human greed and the selfishness that they're stuck on them, but they believe in Phos, since Phos is actually becoming something neither gem nor human, an amalgamation of everything, and more capable of doing the unknown. While on the moon, Phosphophyllite's eye gets replaced with a light-up tracking eye. This is so that the Lunarians can look in on Phos and see everything that's going on. After her eye gets replaced, they get sent back down to Earth and are talking with the other gems, trying to convince Adamant to pray for all the Lunarians and all the creatures, and to convince the gems to come back with them to the moon, where life is supposed to be more peaceful. Phos's coup is relatively successful. Some of the gems come back to the moon while some decide to stay on the island, but this creates a massive division in them. Most of the gems who go back want a better life, such as Papradacha and Yellow Diamond, all people who have lived a long time and are still not feeling fulfilled with their lives. All the other gems decide to treat them as traitors and horrible people to go be with their enemies. Because of this, the conflict between the other gems and Phosphophyllite just continued to increase. After Phos comes back down from the moon, they enter into a fight with all the other gems, mercilessly killing them and destroying them, trying to get to Adamant to demand him to pray away everyone there, even killing Cinnabar, Phos's closest friend and person who they had such a strong relationship with and made such a dear promise to. Even after fighting, Adamant still will not pray. Phos is so angry at the fact that they are all kept there and everyone there is forced to suffer just by one man not wanting them to go. Phos doesn't know yet that the secret's that everyone is broken and everyone will go away, since the Lunarians are keeping that secret. Phos just wants the conflict to stop. They don't like how this entire ordeal, all of their friends dying, Antarctica dying, every single part of their body being replaced by the Lunarians is caused solely by Adamant, their teacher. His care and obsession for the gems allows them to exist, but by letting them exist, he is actively knowing that they will all die, and that they will all be put into countless danger from the Lunarians just attempting to get his attention. Phos and the other gems and Adamant all finally decide enough is enough. After all of the conflict, Adamant decides that he will pray for everybody. But in order to do that, since he is broken and cannot control it, he has to pass his powers on to Phosphophyllite. Phos at this point has accomplished everything out of the list. They recognized sufferings there. They found the suffering and were holding on to someone so dear, Cinnabar, and all their other friends and family. But at this point, Phos has lost so much of themselves, their connection to who they are is absolutely gone, allowing them to feel some kind of disconnect and separation from all their desires. Now, all they wish for is peace. They recognize humanity as a whole as something that is suffering, something that is greedy, something that exists to suffer. And so this allows Phos to take on the powers that Adamant has, so that Phos can pray away everyone there. This is basically a stage of enlightenment. The story is also related to Buddhism. We can also assume that everything is related to samsara, or the cycle of death and rebirth. Since we know this, we can assume that in the plot that there is a cycle and that there is suffering, and suffering is inevitable. For example, all the characters are suffering even though they're existing through their life. The Lunarians especially are suffering. They're suffering from being immortal. They want to escape their life. They want to escape this perfect good that they're dealing with, and by doing so, they actively persecute and harm other living beings' life, just so that they can accomplish and achieve the thing that they want. Since all of these creatures are also an extension of humanity, in order for humanity to be freed, they needed a praying machine. So in this case, they created a robot, or Adamant, in order to pray for everyone once they leave, so that everyone could escape into the nothingness afterlife. Because of this, Adamant was left alone on the island, and over time, new life forms were formed. Adamant became very attached to them and didn't want to lose them, and so he refused to pray, since his defect would allow everyone there to be whisked away into nothingness, and he didn't want to lose his forever family that he had created. This is why the whole selfish conflict the Lunarians cause stems from directly humanity. All of these creatures have been experiencing every single act of humanity: love, compassion, hatred, greed, conflict. Everything is affected by their human emotions and all of their human desires. This also goes back into Buddhism, which they believe that everything is suffering. To live is to suffer. There is no escape from suffering, and once you do escape the suffering by letting go of everything and your emotion and your greed and your desires, you are finally able to reach enlightenment, which is what finally happens at the end of the story for Phosphophyllite. But the con to receiving these powers is that everyone has to sit there for 10,000 years. So all of the other gems exist in their lives, going day by day, the same life, with immortality for over 10,000 years. And phos is there in nothingness, sitting by themselves alone, just taking on the powers in some otherworldly void. Um, After all of these things have happened and phos is able to take on the powers, they are there by themselves in the field. Yet every single other creature, the amaryllis, the spirits, the gems, all of them are there, ready to get preyed away by phos. Phos has a moment where they think, is this okay? Should I just murder them all? Should I let them suffer? Should I send the sun into their bodies so they can just explode in agonizing death for all of eternity? But no, Phos decides that that wouldn't be right. Suffering is hard, and so I will not make them suffer for making me suffer. I will let them be free. I will release them into the nothingness. So Phosphophyllite prays away everybody, essentially becoming a god. Unfortunately, this means that phos is ultimately all by themselves on this world. They are the only creature to be existing anymore. And after years, tens of thousands of years of phos just wandering around the world, new life slowly begins to develop. This new life are little rocky guys that are just existing in their life. They're very sweet and they have no traces of humanity in them, essentially being a purer life form, not able to feel the jealousy and greed since they have not been afflicted by such pains. Over time, phos watches and teaches more and more of the little rocks about life and how to exist, and just about singing and songs and poetry, different art forms that they can all partake in no matter how big or small the rocks are. Also, fun games that they can play. These life forms all exist, and then one day, Pit Pat, Adamon's brother, appears by smelling phos's humanity. By Pitapat coming and seeing Phosphophyllite in the god form, they are able to talk to phos and explain existence. And in this area, and at this time, they are able to meet up because the sun is slowly approaching the planet. The planet is about to be destroyed, and everyone is converging together to escape the planet on a spaceship and to go to another world where they will be safe. But phos is unable to do this. Phos does not want to take their humanity with them and tarnish another population of people with all of the feelings that everyone has had. So Pitapat takes the last remaining fragment of phos from their godlike body and takes it with them on the spaceship. As they get sent out of the world, phos remains there, just getting destroyed by the sun. As phos selflessly allows themselves to be destroyed, the other rocks on the plane all pray for phos by singing songs and remorsing over leaving their dear friend behind. This allows phos to turn into the spirit or the Lunarian and finally be able to escape the world. And at the end of the story, it's just all the rocks singing together and having a good time, since they are the last remaining life forms starting their own world and building up their own new traditions and way of life. This story, to me, is really touching and heartfelt because it does go through all of the remorse and regret that you can feel in your life. Phos even remarks at the end of the story, I had everything I ever wanted, and now the things I want are gone. Because of this, Phos really understands the values of their life and everything that they ever wanted. After going through all of these struggles, they still are not happy because they found out that what they truly always wanted was to fit in and have fun and love their family and their friends, which they cannot do now since they have all moved on into the afterlife. Phos is full of regret, so it's really great to see them be able to go into this other world where they are happier and can escape all the suffering and pain for being the last one there. Also, sacrificing themselves by destroying every last piece of humanity so that they don't infect the new society of rocks with all of their regretful emotions and pain is also very admirable and depressing to think about, that you yourself are the infection. Phos's fragments are getting spreaded around. The last remaining bit of truly who Phos is only a small rock which was saved. This small rock breaks and also has been released into the cosmos, trying to hit other comets and just existing. This is the last true part of Phos. So when discussing how much of Phos is really Phos, I think it's safe to say that this last chunk of Phosphophyllite is Phosphophyllite themselves. Their humanity is gone, but who they are intrinsically is still there, and that is something that you can never take away, no matter how much you destroy a Phos. All the other things are just additions and changes, but this last piece is Phos themselves. I've personally always found the desire for more and unhappiness with your situation such an interesting topic, because you could have everything you want and not know that you have everything. You could not know that the things you desire are not actually what you want. It's just something that you're seeking after. The truth isn't always exactly what you want to hear, and sometimes you don't ever want to hear it, but it's something that you think is necessary. By evading truth and going on with their lives, Phosphophyllite would have been able to exist and find some kind of peace. Phos could have avoided this entire situation by being happy with their circumstance and going on to doing something else, accepting the reality that they were given. But because they are human, and just like us, everyone reaches their breaking point, everyone has something that they want to do, everyone has limitations, Phos could not accept the limitations that were given to them, and just like humanity, attempted to exceed that and go beyond what they could do in order to find the exact thing that they wished for. But just like us, that is sometimes possible. Just like as Phos does be able to reach a godlike state and is able to help everyone escape into the nothingness, humanity is also constantly defying expectations of what people are or aren't meant to do. The things that we create, the things that we do are always one step ahead of another, always searching for more, always seeking advancements. Anyways, yeah, that is Land of Lustrous. Of course, you could go into a million more things about the relationships of the characters. I could go deeper in depth and summarize more about what Phos really went through and Phos's motivations and actions. But what I was really interested for this is how Phos physically changes throughout the story and how that directly impacts their memories and everything else. So yeah, maybe I'll make another video on some other aspect of the story, possibly just not the moon arc, because I don't really like the moon arc that much. So yeah, bye-bye. And if you haven't, go watch the show and read the manga because it's so great. It's great, in my opinion, and I left out a lot, so you could see a lot more happening still.